In Activity 5, Wind Strength, students learn how to rate wind strength using the Beaufort scale. Students first observe the effects of wind on objects outdoors, and then discover that wind strength can change throughout the day and from one day to the next. You will need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 5 and the Beaufort Wind Scale. You will also need to provide colored pencils. To prepare for Session 1, make a copy of Activity Sheet 5 and the Beaufort Wind Scale for each student. Each team of 2 will need some colored pencils. To begin Session 1, ask students to share their experiences with windy weather. Students may have had their hats blown off, had their hair tangled, had difficulty walking, had an umbrella turned inside out, had papers blown across the schoolyard, and so on. Remind students that the air in the atmosphere is constantly moving. The faster the air moves, the stronger the wind. Introduce students to Sir Francis Beaufort. Beaufort was an admiral in the British Navy and spent many years at sea. In 1805, he came up with a way to rate wind strength based on the visible effects of the wind on his sailing ship. Ask students, why might a sailor be interested in knowing the strength of the wind? Students should understand that wind pushes sailboats across the water, and that the greater the strength or speed of the wind, the faster the boat will travel through the water. Help students realize that wind also causes waves, and that the stronger the wind is, the higher the waves will be. Inform the class that a combination of strong winds and high waves can make sailing dangerous. The Beaufort scale rates wind strength on a scale from 0 to 12, with 0 meaning total calm or no wind, and 12 meaning hurricane force winds. Over the years, scientists have adapted the Beaufort scale for use on land, and the National Weather Service still uses it today. Next, instruct students to practice rating things on a scale by writing the numbers 0 through 12 in a column, then writing the words least favorite to the left of the number 0. To the left of the 12, write the words most favorite. Then, as a class, brainstorm a list of foods and rate each food from 0 to 12, with 0 being the least favorite and 12 being the most favorite. Try to get a consensus on some of the items. Distribute a copy of the Beaufort Wind Scale to each student and review it as a class. Point out that the pictures in the left-hand column show the effects of wind on some common outdoor objects. Next to each picture is a description of the effects. In the third column is the Beaufort scale rating, from 0 to 12, and in the last column is the wind strength, from calm to hurricane force. Hand out a copy of Activity Sheet 5 and some pencils to each student. In pairs, ask students to observe and record the wind strength twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, for 3 days. Help students apply the Beaufort scale to their observations. To prepare for Session 2, each student will need his or her copy of Activity Sheet 5. To begin Session 2, instruct students to answer questions 1 and 2 on their activity sheet and discuss their results. Ask students, what did you notice about wind strength over the past 3 days? Students should have observed that wind strength could change during the day and from one day to the next. Then ask, why do you think wind strength changes? Help students understand that wind strength changes for the same reasons that cause wind direction to change. The uneven heating of the earth by the sun causes differences in air temperature. Finally, find out if there are variations in students' observations and ask, what might account for the differences in your wind ratings? Students may point out that they have chosen different objects to observe, that some objects may have been more exposed than others, or that students may have interpreted their observations differently. Explain to the class that a sudden change in wind strength and direction can signal a change in the weather, and that weather changes are often accompanied by increasingly cloudy skies. Finally, inform students that in the next activity, they will learn how clouds form. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.